Let's transition to a matchup in the AFC as the Las Vegas Raiders beat the Baltimore Ravens 26-23. The Raiders they trailed by 10 points in the fourth quarter, and the Ravens, they fall to 0-2 for the fifth time in franchise history. For the Raiders, Gardner Minshew, he went 30 of 38. He threw for 276 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Davante Adams had an elite performance, 9 receptions, 110 receiving yards, 1 touchdown. For the Ravens, Lamar Jackson, he went 21 of 34. He threw for 247 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. So, for me, my biggest takeaway as I watched this game was the Ravens' inability to finish games. And for me, the biggest question as I was thinking about, okay, what's the things I want to talk about pertaining to this Raiders-Ravens game? And to me, I believe that the Ravens lost this game more than the Raiders won this game. But I'm going to give some credit to the Raiders before I talk about the Ravens. Shout out to Antonio Pierce, head coach of the Raiders, Gardner Minshew, and Davante Adams. Davante Adams was balling yesterday, and showed why he is still a top 5 receiver in the NFL. 9 receptions, 110 receiving yards, 1 touchdown. Max Crosby was balling on the defensive side of the ball for the Raiders. 5 solo tackles, 2 sacks, 4 tackles for a loss, 2 quarterback hits. Max Crosby was balling. He was the best defensive player on the field. Davante Adams was balling offensively for the Raiders. And Antonio Pierce did a great job as their head coach. And he outcoached John Harbaugh yesterday. Yes, Antonio Pierce outcoached John Harbaugh yesterday in the Raiders' 26-23 win over the Ravens. So I'm going to give some credit to the Raiders overcoming a 10-point deficit in the fourth quarter. But in order to have a great comeback, that means you also had a significant collapse. And the Ravens collapsed in this game. And once again, the Ravens' inability to close football games is why they lost this game yesterday to the Raiders. And this is since 2019, since Lamar Jackson's first full season as a starting quarterback. This is losses after holding a lead of 7 or more in the fourth quarter. The Ravens have 11 losses after holding a lead of 7 or more points in the fourth quarter. That's the most in the NFL during that span. And what made it crazy to me, and what really baffles my mind, is they brought in Derrick Henry. And Derrick Henry is supposed to help the Ravens in these type of situations. And when the Ravens went up 23-13 over the Raiders on that drive, when they went up 10 points, and I thought the game was over, they went up 10 points on the Raiders. Henry, he ran 6 times on their 7 plays during that drive. He had 36 yards. And I'm thinking, oh, this game is over. The Ravens going to win this game because Derrick Henry is going to bring them home. And after that drive, Derrick Henry only touched the football one more time the rest of the game. After they went up 23-13, 10-point lead, you're Lamar Jackson and the Ravens, a contender in the AFC North as well, going up against an inferior Raiders team, because even though the Raiders beat the Ravens are a better football team than the Raiders are. So I'm thinking this game is over. And instead, they only give Derrick Henry the football one more time after they had a 23-13 lead. Made completely No sense. Made no sense whatsoever. And offensively, John Harbaugh, Todd Monken, the offensive coordinator for the Ravens, and Lamar Jackson, they have to figure out how to not be so predictable as an offense. Because when Derrick Henry is in the game, the Ravens, they run the football. When Justice Hill is in the game, they throw the football. So they have to figure out a way to not be so damn predictable. What is going on here? Todd Monken, John Harbaugh, Lamar Jackson, get a little creative. Get a little creative. You can't be so predictable as an offense. You cannot be predictable as an offense. And defensively, they gave up another lead. And when you look at the Ravens defense, they lost Mike McDonald. He's the head coach now for the Seattle Seahawks. And they had some major losses from that defense of last year. They lost Patrick Queen. They lost Geno Stone. They lost Jadeveon Clowney as well. So this Ravens defense, they're not the same defense in 2024 compared to what they were in 2023. They are a much, much, much worse defense this year compared to last year. And last year, the Ravens defensively, they only gave up 25 or more points twice last year. They've already allowed 25 points or more in their first two games of the season against the Chiefs and against the Raiders. So they are not a great defensive football team. And offensively, they are very, very, very predictable. And honestly, I am worried about the Baltimore Ravens. And when I look at the AFC North, Bengals, Ravens, both are 0-2. But I'm more worried about the Ravens than I am the Bengals. Honestly, the Bengals could have beat the Chiefs yesterday. They could have easily won that game if they fix some of their things on their own. Like, there had things on their own that they could have been fixed. But the Bengals played the Chiefs tough yesterday. The Ravens, on the other hand, this was a complete collapse. And I'm worried about the Ravens. I really, really am. And Zay Flowers, their receiver, because we're talking about how, okay, the Ravens need to run the football more with Derrick Henry. Well, Zay Flowers apparently doesn't believe so, because there was a tweet yesterday, and Zay Flowers retweeted the following tweet. Second week in a row that he's had a big first half, and they stopped getting him the ball in the second half. That's what someone tweeted. Zay Flowers retweeted that, which tells me Zay Flowers doesn't want the Ravens to run the football with Derrick Henry in the second half. But I believe that's what they need to do to finish off football games. That's what they need to do. And I'm looking at Lamar Jackson in his last three games. Playoff game against the Chiefs, AFC Championship. Week 1, Chiefs. Week 2, Raiders. You look at Lamar Jackson in his last three games compared to his first 17 games. Last year, this is the start of the 2023 season of last year compared to his last three games. Lamar Jackson in his first 17 games last year, 14-3. He's 0-3 in his last three games. This is the first three-game losing streak of Lamar Jackson's career. His team's points per game, Lamar Jackson and the Ravens, in those first 17 games last year, 30 points per game. In their last three games, 18 points per game. Lamar Jackson, in those first 17 games, he averaged 225 total yards passing per game. In those last three games, 264 passing yards per game. His passer rating in his first 17 games last year was 103.6. In his last three games, it's 82.9. He's completed 67% of his passes in his first 17 games last year. And in his last three games, he's only completed 60% of his passes. So if you're a Baltimore Raven fan, you should be concerned. And Unlike the Bengals, who I said should remain patient and not panic, the Ravens should panic. They should panic and not remain patient. They have to figure out how to not be so predictable as an offense, and defensively, they have to get better as a unit. They have to get better as a unit. And I'm concerned. I'm concerned for the Ravens. And here's the thing about the Ravens. Their schedule, it doesn't get easier. It doesn't get any easier. Week 3, they're in Dallas against the Cowboys. Week 4, they're home against the Bills. Week 5, they are in Cincy against Joe Burrow and the Bengals at Paycor Stadium. So their next 3 games are all games they could potentially lose. They could potentially lose these next 3 games. I don't think they will, but they could. Cowboys, Bills, Bengals, that's tough. This was supposed to be their gimme game, their game that you check off as a win when you look at the schedule before the season. Going up against the Raiders, a team I don't believe is going to be a playoff team in the AFC. This was a game you checked as a win for the Ravens. So they're 0-2. Is it possible the Ravens could start the season 0-5? It's possible. It's possible. So that Ravens-Cowboys game in week 3 is going to be a big, big game for both teams. But they got to figure something out as a football team right now because they don't really have a true identity. They don't have a true identity. But shout out to Antonio Pierce, Devontae Adams, Max Crosby, and the Raiders overcoming a 10-point deficit in the fourth quarter and beating the Ravens in a week 2 matchup. So great job by the Raiders, and the Ravens are in trouble. They are in trouble. Everybody go and follow Wise Guys on Twitter at WiseGuys_H. Also on Facebook, Wise Guys. I'll be right back.